Hi folks, welcome to the Gaming Guillotine, where I extol the excellent and execute the poorly executed. Speaking of poorly executed, Nvidia? Is everything alright? Blink twice if the stockholders are in the room. Regarding public perceptions, Nvidia has not been treating its gaming customers very well this year. It seems as though I'm hearing about some new driver or software issue every week with their high-end 50 series cards. They're wholly missing the mark of good value when pricing their low-end cards. Every day their 12-pin power connectors are frying and melting somewhere in the world. And finally, next month, they're reportedly ending support for what I would contend are still perfectly usable and capable graphics cards in what could be viewed as an illustration of planned obsolescence. Now, some modern game developers aren't exactly helping with this problem. Games with mandatory ray tracing requirements combined with titles using regularly unoptimized engines for what they're trying to do, and AAA games are contributing to this notion that we need newer hardware. We must upgrade. Something I think this week's release of Hollow Knight Silksong clearly debunks, as that game's minimum requirements say that you can get away with a 500 class card. That said, there are several cards within the blast radius of losing driver support that are still being used. The GTX 1060 is 13th on the Steam hardware survey list, and the 1050 Ti is 21st, both of which are above the most used AMD card. Together, they account for about 4% of all users in the Steam hardware survey. Now, Steam has about 100 million regular monthly users, and assuming half of them take the hardware survey, that means about 2 million people are using those cards, and those examples aren't even the most powerful of their generation. That card being the highlight of today's video, the GTX 1080 Ti. Released in 2017, the 1080 Ti is still nothing to sneeze at. According to Tech PowerUp, for raw horsepower, it actively trades blows with the RTX 2070 and the 3060 12GB. In fact, I remember seeing an article saying that it was only just getting beat by the RTX 5050 after someone had to overclock the newer card. To that note, you can regularly get a used 1080 Ti for $100 to $150 used, while the 5050 is $250 new. Do you see the value problem I cited earlier? Yeah, you may not get access to DLSS and other modern software enhancements built in, but modern CPUs and other components can easily pick up that slack. Getting back to stats and performance, the 1080 Ti comes with 11GB of DDR5X memory, a 352-bit memory bus, and a bandwidth of 484GB per second. While the 1080 Ti is starting to lose out to some more modern cards, it's still performative, and to illustrate, I threw together this machine. The last time I featured the 1080 Ti, it was an upgrade I paired with a first-generation i7. Clearly a bottleneck, but today we're giving some parity and room to breathe. Running with an i7 6800K with 6 cores and 12 threads, along with 16GB of DDR4 2400 RAM, this is a perfect illustration of a machine that would have been built around the time the 1080 Ti was released. An 8-year-old machine that, I contend, you could still game on with a fair degree of comfort. That said, I gathered some of the heaviest hitting games in my Steam library, so let's see how well this GPU holds up. As always, we start with our built-in bench tests. Shadow of the Tomb Raider on highest settings at 1080p, so an average of 113. The lows also tended to hover around 90. Shadow of the Tomb Raider might be only about a year newer than the card running it, but it scales great to new hardware and looks amazing when you give it room to breathe. Cyberpunk 2077 on ultra settings and no ray tracing, an entirely unnecessary feature, maintained a steady, stable, and resolutely playable experience. The minimum frame rate of 58 and an average of 73 means that if you don't mind using VSync, you'll have a stable experience from start to finish. Use the game's built-in upscaling and you probably could reach even higher. Rather than resort to my usual racing benchmark of Wreckfest, I instead opted for its early access sequel. Wreckfest 2 is still in its early stages of development, meaning the graphical tech is cutting edge and probably not all that well optimized. That said, as per the previous game, the opening fight for positioning is where the most weight is put on the various processors. 45 FPS seem to be the average on ultra settings, but as expected, things pick up once you're out of the pack. Depending on the local opponent density, I was regularly anywhere between 55 and 85 FPS. I mean, you can't get any more current than a game still being worked on. We've seen how station-to-station drags down graphics cards like the 960, the 1070, and the Titan Z. The 1080 Ti has no problem putting them to shame. Zoomed in close, the frame rate would hover around 40 FPS, but could jump right back up to the 80s once I zoomed out. Even the most strenuous moments of connecting depots with the area's color returning never got below 30 FPS. Of course, these moments are so pretty to me that I have a tendency of just not caring about frame rates. It just looks so damn pleasant. One of the most strenuous games I've played is Pacific Drive. With all the assorted particle effects, environmental details, and various other bits to account for, this was the game that made me upgrade my Steam box from a RX 6600 XT, a card with right around the same raw power as the 1080 Ti. As such, on Ultra settings, the experience was about the same. Around 30 FPS with occasional dips into the mid-20s. Playable, but minorly annoying. Lowering the setting too high jumped our average to 45 FPS, and medium put us even higher to the 60 threshold. That said, I honestly didn't see all that much of a difference. I mean, I'm more concerned on overall experiences rather than fixating on things like grass textures and particle effects. Regardless, the 1080 Ti could handle Pacific Drive. Warhammer 40k Space Marines 2 was a bit annoying to set up due to the mandatory internet connection and not playing nice with outdated versions of Riva Tuner. But once I got in, I made sure to ram the graphics settings as high as they would go. Progression-wise, this also served to be the perfect moment to stress things out, as a horde set in on my position. Never did it fall below 30 FPS. Lower settings would likely feel a bit smoother, but this is on par with modern console versions, and the raw machismo this game emanates left me entirely unbothered about my frame rate. A stable 30 is just fine in my book. Elder Scrolls Oblivion Remastered was about what I expected. It did weigh on the hardware and fully taxed the GPU, but a minimum of 55 FPS means that whatever janky actions or amusing misadventures befell you, the 1080 Ti would still be able to facilitate your playthrough. But finally, can it run Crysis? And that's not just me asking the question for the sake of being mimetic. That's also the name of the highest graphical settings in Crysis Remastered. And the answer to both is yes. While the frame rate managed to stay just above 40 FPS at its worst moments, the fact is this legendary game, with the maximum settings designed for supercomputers of the future, can be played on the GTX 1080 Ti, and can even stabilize at 60 FPS. This GPU is still great, and that's why even with the support ending, I'd argue this is not the end. In my humble opinion, Nvidia is wrong for ending support of the 1000 series cards. The 900 series I can understand. The most usable cards of the 900 series are the 980 Ti and the Titan X, but their prices to performance can be hard to justify by comparison. But just because Nvidia is dropping support, that doesn't mean it's the end for these cards. The developers at DICE just came out and said that the next Battlefield will not require ray tracing, something that spits in the face of the push that Nvidia has been making in the development community. I would implore other devs to take the same route. But even if the devs aren't going to take action to facilitate older cards, they're not the only people that are taking positive steps. Let's not forget the community of enthusiasts who modify drivers to keep cards relevant. Also, there's the retro enthusiasts. Hell, as I type this script, there's a 560 Ti humming away in Furmark for an upcoming project. Just because Nvidia wants people to move on, it doesn't mean you need to. If you're playing games that don't require newer hardware and you're happy, then fuck Nvidia. And just enjoy what you have as long as you can. Hey, thanks for sticking around all the way to the end. Remember that I give away Steam keys with my regular weekly uploads, and all you have to do to enter is leave a comment and have contact info on your YouTube profile. But as always, thanks for watching and keep your head on your shoulders.